All right, let's jump right into this explainer and unpack a fascinating ancient story that completely flips how we think about modern fulfillment. Today, we're looking at a classic parable, The King and the Secret of True Gratitude. We spend so much of our time chasing things, right? Building our entire lives around whatever we want to acquire next. But what if the very act of chasing is the exact thing keeping us from what we actually want? Let's explore that together.
So, we've got to start with the ultimate question, the one that drives almost everything we do every single day. What exactly is happiness? It's literally the silent engine behind our longest work hours, our biggest purchases, and frankly, our most stressful decisions. We are all looking for it. But how do we actually define it when we strip everything else away?
Is it money? I mean, society definitely tells us that accumulating wealth is the definitive answer, right? The logic goes that if we just have enough in the bank, we won't have to worry, and therefore, boom, we'll automatically be happy. But we really need to see if that actually holds up to reality.
Or maybe it's success. Like, is happiness hitting that massive career goal, getting that perfect title, or having the respect and admiration of everyone around you? Is it finally possessing everything you've ever wanted and standing at the absolute top of the mountain? Well, our source material sets up this amazing contrast between two totally different lives. First, picture a king who possessed literally everything imaginable: a magnificent palace, loyal servants, expensive treasures, and the envy of thousands. People looked at his life the way we might look at a billionaire's social media feed today. And yet, every single night, he went to sleep feeling completely empty. No matter what he achieved, the feeling of happiness never stayed. The thrill of every new possession faded almost instantly, leaving him right back where he started. So driven absolutely crazy by this fleeting excitement, the king finally calls in the wisest man in his kingdom and asks this super vulnerable question. Tell me, why am I unhappy when I have everything? It's a profound paradox, isn't it? I mean, he's won the game of life by all societal metrics, but he feels like he's completely lost. Now, the wise man doesn't just hand him some dusty philosophical riddle. Instead, he tells the king to go spend one day, in disguise, of course, just observing the daily life of a poor farmer. So the king dresses like an ordinary guy and visits him, and what he finds completely shocks him. The farmer lives in a tiny house, wears simple clothes, and has very little money. Yet, his family laughs together while eating. They sing while working. At night, they express thanks for another day and sleep peacefully. The king simply cannot compute this reality. The king is frankly baffled. He finally asks the farmer how he can possibly be so happy with so little. And the farmer's answer? It brilliantly exposes the core difference between them. The farmer smiles and says, "Because I stopped waiting for happiness to come from outside." The farmer's secret was entirely internal. He wasn't waiting for his circumstances to change to give himself permission to be happy. When you break it down, the farmer's approach was shockingly simple. He actively chose to enjoy his daily work, to love his family, and to deeply appreciate what he already had right in front of him. He realized a fundamental truth. If he spent his life chasing more and more, he would never, ever have enough. It really shows how he actively chooses to engage with the present moment rather than exhaust himself chasing a mirage. So the king goes back to the wise man and basically says, "Look, I still don't get it." Which, makes total sense for a guy who spent his whole life successfully acquiring stuff. But the wise man knows exactly what to do. He uses a pretty powerful physical metaphor to make it click for the king, the analogy of the overflowing cup. To illustrate this, the wise man simply grabs a cup and begins pouring water into it. But he doesn't stop. He just keeps pouring, even as the cup fills all the way to the brim, until the water inevitably spills out over the edges and makes a mess everywhere. The wise man finally stops and asks the king what happened. The king, probably thinking this is a ridiculously obvious trick question, just says the cup was already full. But in stating this obvious physical reality, the king is unknowingly diagnosing his exact psychological state. And the wise man just smiles and says, "Exactly." See, the crux of the issue is endless desire. When a mind is already overflowing with expectations, goals, and wishes, it simply cannot hold on to or appreciate what life currently offers. No matter how much life gives you, there's always going to be another wish, another goal, another expectation. There is literally no room left for gratitude. And man, do we see this exact same ancient problem today in what we call the modern traps of when. How many of us have spent our lives believing things like, "Oh, I'll be happy when I get that promotion," or "when I buy that house," or "when my post gets enough likes"?
We constantly push our happiness into an imaginary future, making it contingent on something we don't currently possess. It's essentially the psychological equivalent of endlessly doom scrolling for satisfaction.
This brings us to a really fundamental shift in perspective. We have a choice here. We can treat happiness as a destination, like a finish line we arrive at once we achieve enough, or we can treat it as a way of living. The source material warns us that the destination keeps moving, but a daily practice of gratitude? That's available to us right now. Happiness isn't a destination, it's a way of living.
To really anchor this concept, there's this incredible insight from the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius that absolutely hits the nail on the head. He wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself." The happiest people aren't the ones who have the most. They're the ones who have mastered their internal landscape, who are deeply grateful for the exact moment they're standing in, regardless of their external wealth. So, if here's one thing you take away from this explainer today, it's this. True happiness does not come from possessing more. It comes from needing less. Ultimately, the richest person isn't the one accumulating the most treasures. The richest person is the one who's learned to be completely and totally grateful for what they already hold in their hands. Actually, think about it. Perhaps happiness has never been missing from our lives. Maybe we've just been looking for it in the wrong places all along.
I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on today as you consider where you might be looking for fulfillment in your own life. Ask yourself honestly, if you achieved everything you were chasing today, would you finally be happy? Or would your mind simply create another desire? It might just be time to empty the cup and start appreciating what is right in front of you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll